Our next speaker has travelled a long way to join us. My pronunciation of this is going to be terrible, so I apologise in advance. But Philippe Brunet has travelled all the way from France, where he was born. I won't say when. And he holds qualifications in medicine and community law. Is that right? Yes. That's incredible. That's like, wow. So, amongst being an incredibly smart guy with multiple degrees, he's had a long and distinguished career in politics. In 2012, he was appointed as the Director for Aerospace, Maritime and Defence Industries, and as of January 2013, he has been the Director... Wait, this is possibly the coolest job title ever. So, he's been the Director of Space Policy, Copernicus and Defence European Commission. I want that on my business cards. That's amazing. He's responsible for the implementation of Copernicus, a constellation of European Union satellites offering Earth observation services on a full, open and free of charge basis, and the development of civil and military synergies in security and defence matters to render the defence industry competitive and underpin a credible and effective common security and defence policy. Please welcome Philippe.
Thank you very much. So hello everybody, I'm just realizing that I'm in the role of the exotic bird here because I'm not only coming from the European Union, but I'm French, and I'm director in the European Commission. So I will start maybe to tell you what is the European Commission for those who have just a very, I would say, general knowledge about the organization of Europe. Is the executive body, the kind of government of the European Union. And actually I'm in your country for two things. First, to promote the ties we have already put in place with the Australian government in sort of collaboration for the Earth observation system, the EU Earth observation system, which is called Copernicus, but also to represent the European Union in the CEOS. And I know that the previous panel have been describing what are the objectives of the CEOS. So I will not go back to that. Why I've accepted to be here this morning? I could maybe just give you in one sentence our goal in Europe, which is exactly, I get the same everywhere. Space, our grandfather space, does not exist anymore. Space has invaded our daily life. We have more and more smart satellites. We have more and more IT system to deal with space. But one thing is missing, the skills. Because space has been changing dramatically in the last couple of years, not to say even decade. Space has seen new waves of space entrepreneurs coming primarily from the US with completely different objectives, completely different business models than before. The private sector has taken a share of space more and more important and modified completely what space was just a decade or 2 decades ago. We in Europe more and more are dividing up space in two main categories. First, science, and it's still what we are thinking of when we pronounce the word space. That means distant planets, exploration, in the future intergalactic travel, and another space which is now in the real economy, which is producing jobs and growth, which is more and more competitive, and which is behind most of the aspects of our daily life. And this space is not the kind of space maybe you could dream of when you are in a college or at university, but it's a space which will shape our common future. From weather forecast, satellite TV, car navigation system, banking transaction, smartphone application, all of these are relying on space infrastructures. More importantly, there are more and more private investment. I was just saying, venture capital funds are being injected in space. In 2015 alone, more private capital was invested in space than in the previous 15 years taken altogether. Above everything, non-traditional space actors are entering and steering the space market. One of the main actors now in both sides of the Atlantic Ocean are Google and Amazon. Google and Amazon primarily were not, absolutely not, aiming at entering space, but through the applications, the IT applications, the big data management, and they are doing very well in big data management. They have just understood that they possess the key for the future of space. Of course, we will need in the future rockets, launchers, satellites, sensors. But definitely, one of the most exciting developments and one of the key for the future we see in space today is the big space data phenomenon. I will take the example of Copernicus, which is the Earth observation and monitoring system of Europe. Copernicus looks at the Earth, its environment, and its many ecosystems using satellites in space called the Sentinels, and also measurements system on grounds, at sea and in the air. We have been developing observation and operational services which range from the Arctic sea ice monitoring to emergency responses through oil spill detection and monitoring of urban sprawl. Copernicus produces unprecedented amounts of data and information. These data are released according to a free, full, and open data policy. And the success was so important that the amount of data at the beginning were completely overlooked. And to be honest, one of the main challenges a political organization like the Commission has vis-à-vis Copernicus is that Copernicus has been costing quite a lot. And because it's working much more efficiently than we have thought at the beginning, we have to solve one conundrum: how the amount of data generated by Copernicus are not just put on archives, but are actually distributed and processed to serve the objectives of the system. At the very beginning, all the Sentinels were producing 1 petabyte of data every 1.5 years. A petabyte of data is 1 and 15 zero. Currently, we believe that at the end of 2017, Copernicus will produce more than 1 petabyte of data every 6 months. And why it's very important to release this data, to process this data, to have the skilled people to use this data for instance, through applications, is because space has this kind of totally, at first sight, illogical effect. From space and the global infrastructure, satellites orbiting around the Earth and passing over the pole every 90 minutes. From this space infrastructure, you can create applications and bespoke product, in order to meet nearly individual needs. And this phenomenon is unprecedented, I think, in the story of humanity. So, if I had one message for you this morning. Space is not the European Space Agency, is not NASA, is not all what you could think when you open a page of an encyclopedia or a dictionary and look at the definition of space. This space does exist still, of course, but there is another space, which is no more a space built and growing in isolation, but a space which is part of our daily life. We were talking about the enormous amount of data produced by the system Copernicus, but at the end of the day, is no more than a series of 0 and 1. It's a kind of mine. It's a kind of maybe gold mine. And we need the skills to extract from this gold mine what we want really to get. That's why we need people skilled in software, in powerful computing, and above all, in algorithm. For the future, undoubtedly, space will need more scientists, more engineers, not only to develop our spacecraft and to make major discoveries, maybe, and to push the boundaries of human knowledge, but increasingly to make the application of space more efficient, matching the needs, the diverse needs of humanity. People who understand both the objectives and the context of space, but also who understand data modeling, statistics, mathematics, software development, and IT in general. Digital skills will be the key to enter space. And I think that the future will be to people, will belong to people having this kind of double training to understand the objectives and what space is in terms of infrastructure, but also to have space more user-driven and people who are understanding how to get the benefits of space to each single citizen. So to those of you who may be considering pursuing a career in space or not far from space, my advice would be go ahead, be bold, be innovative, take risk, and never forget that you have space always in your background, even when you pick up your phone to give the result of your exam to your family. To finish, I will present you a trailer we have decided to make for the people raising questions about what an Earth observation system, which is at the first site, just 10, 12 satellites, could finally represent in our daily life. Please.
I'm always on the move, traveling from city to city all over Europe. I'm a bit of a problem solver for companies. My expertise is vast. Today, I'm talking to insurance companies about new ways of anticipating natural disasters with very up-to-date info. Last week, I was talking to some farmers about the irrigation needs for their farmland. Before that, I was giving a lecture on climate change in the Arctic. There is a great demand for my knowledge, which can potentially change the course of events. People keep asking me where I get my information. Maybe someday I will tell my secret.
Thank you very much. Now you know everything about Copernicus.